What I've done here is I've downloaded this model from Pixar. It's available to use for projects and things like that, and they've used it in a number of their competitions and things like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just extract a few bits and pieces from this model so that I can use them as sort of demo models for what I'm doing. It's just saves a lot of time to sort of access this data and stuff like that. So what I've got here is the Maya scene that I've downloaded. I've hidden a few things so that we can sort of explore it a little bit better. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a couple of the assets so that I can export them. Let's have a look at this stool, for example, here. So you can see this is made up of several bits and pieces as we click on that, so different legs and things like that. So if we just sort of filter through, you can see it's sort of no real groups or anything in this project. Is that going to be part of the overall stool? Let's have a look and see what we can find here. That's a different stool there, so that's right. So yeah, it's two different stools here. There's this sort of twisted metal one and this one that looks a bit more like a wooden one, and there's the wooden one there, I believe. So what I'm going to do is begin to select all the elements of this stool. You can see grabbing all of that. Hopefully those are the bases. There we go. So I've got that entire model. Look in here. It looks like I might be missing one leg. Yep, that leg there. So I'm just going to control click and grab. Let me grab that leg. Right, there's the entire stool selected there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export this at the moment as an OBJ. So what I'll do is go File, Export Selection there, and I'll just call this stool. You'll see I've exported a few others already. I just thought I would document this as part of the process that I'm doing there now. So what I'm going to do now is just create a new scene like that, and File, Import, and if I import the stool that I've just done. So the first thing you'll notice is obviously it's actually not too bad, but it's nowhere near the origin or anything else like that. So what I'm going to do for ease is I'm going to group all of this together. So we can go together and just Control G to create a group in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the pivot. Then I'm going to reset all of the transforms so that it should just be transformed to the origin. This will just make it easier later when we import stuff, because basically this is going to be about storing data that we import and then use when we're doing our set dressing and everything else. So a few mail commands here to make it easier. We could actually develop this into a full script to go through everything in the scene, export everything individually and do it, but it's hard to tell. So center pivot, we'll just center the pivot of the object. If we go into transform mode, actually select the group. If we go to transform mode, you'll see that the pivot is actually more or less at the origin there. If we were to go within the group and start selecting individual things, most of the pivots are actually in the same place there. So what I'm going to do with the group now is, if I run center pivot, what you will see is, I go into my, and if I run that, you can see now the pivot's been centered directly on that object. We can then make a call to transform, which will center everything there. We may not need to do that. Sometimes I've needed it, sometimes I've not. Ideally, we can most probably just call the move to move that now. There you go, to the origin. So I didn't actually need the center transform. So you can see now I've got this. It's at the origin. So the center pivot's at 0, 0, 0, and it's more or less going above and below. This makes it a fairly easy thing to import into a new Maya scene, scale, transform, and set dress with. So I'm going to keep that as it is there. So next thing we do is we just go File, Export Selection, everything's still selected, and I'm going to re-export the stool there and overwrite it, and you can see Yes, it's there. So what we can see now, if I'm just going to get rid of that, if I import a few of the other things, so if I go in there, I've exported a bottle as an OBJ there. I've also got a few others, so if I just go through and start importing some of those, there's the jug, and so on. So the job's going to be, these are going to be the simple assets to start with that we're going to store in the database. And then we're going to have the ability to load these all in and out. So I've got a variety of different shape, size objects and things like that for my project. So the next thing we're going to do is save these. I'm going to export them in 3 formats. I'm going to do OBJ, FBX, and USD. So I most probably write a simple script to go through and import all the OBJs and then export them as other elements, which I will talk about a bit later. The next thing we're also then going to do is to create some images of the meshes. So for example, we'll have the side view like that, we will have the top view, and we'll have a perspective projection view so that we can store them in the database. Again, it helps sometimes to visually look through things. So we're going to store all of this information in a database a little later.